Thank you for those beautiful devotions. So we started this conference on Thursday with a plenary session that helped us really appreciate the relationship between the local and the global in our own identity development and the development of our identity in relation to each other. And as we tried to learn more about the interconnectedness of our local community building activities, of discourses, and social action, we are, okay, bring the mic closer. We are focused also on those learnings that are emerging from the local contexts that can give us a better understanding, again, of this link between local and global. So the panelists this morning will give us some insights from their experiences in local community building activities and their experiences in their professions, especially with displaced populations or refugee populations here in Atlanta. And they're going to try and draw from some of these experiences, they're going to draw insights that hopefully help us understand how these local insights allow us to, in some ways, shift our own understandings and shift the dominant discourse around refugee populations, forced displacement, and movement around the world. So we have a very special panel, and I'd like to invite them to come up. Where are you panelists? And, and the panelists will then introduce themselves. So welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shadi Salehian, and I'm really honored to be here this morning with my colleagues here and to share with you some insights and perhaps some learnings that has been happening at the neighborhood and grassroots level in our interaction with displaced populations and refugees. Before we start, I just wanted to share that obviously we know that the issue of migration and displaced populations and refugees is a complex issue. It has many, many different layers, and obviously what we are sharing today is not all comprehensive. There are many, many layers and issues that we will not have time to touch on. But what we hope to do today is to start with giving you a very brief global perspective about the refugee and migration issues that globally we are facing today. After that, we will zoom in and focus on one specific local neighborhood here in Atlanta, Georgia. And then we will get really into the details of some of the work that has been done in the neighborhood and share some of our learning, current learning. And we know that this is, of course, an organic thing, and we are continuously learning and learning from the activities. And our hope is that you will leave here learning and thinking about how you can contribute to this learning. And it is something that each one of us can be engaged in and contribute to the learning that's happening. So with that said, we will start with the current historical background on who are the refugees and where did it all begin. So contrary to popular belief, the inception of the refugee crisis dates back to the Second World War, where the United Nations General Assembly was looking for solutions on resettling displaced populations in Europe, predominantly the Jews. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee or what is known today as UNHCR, was established in 1950 by the United Nations General Assembly in response to this challenge, with one mandate, which was really for protecting the refugees around the world. We know that the rates of international migration have drastically increased over the past century. Changes in the global socio-economic and political climate have contributed to the resurgence and insurgent wave of refugee displacement. Over 67% of the world's refugees are in developing countries, and areas of instability extending from Southwest Asia to the Middle East and central regions of Africa. Since 2005, there has been an increase in the global refugee population, as we said, resulting from war and conflict, especially in Afghanistan, Iraq, and more recently, of course, in Syria. And just briefly to just mention, there are many different definitions and categories. For example, refugee, internally displaced, and migrants. And we won't go into these details. But needless to say that all of them, depending on what category they are in need of assistance in either resettlement or other processes that they are engaged in. Currently, the International Migration Report at the end of December 2017 has reported that there are 258 million people that live right now in a country other than the one they were born in. So to just give you a perspective of the extent of the issue that we are dealing with. An unprecedented 68.5 million people around the world have been forced from their home. Among them are nearly 25.4 million refugees, over half of whom are under the age of 18. There are also an estimated 10 million stateless people who have been denied a nationality and access to basic rights, such as education, healthcare, employment, and freedom of movement. So, in a word, nearly one person is forcibly displaced every 2 seconds. Let me repeat that. One person is displaced every 2 seconds. This is all as a result of persecution and other conflicts that's happening. And I just wanted to briefly touch on the fact that 77% of internally displaced populations, they come from 10 countries only, starting with Syria, but the second one is Colombia, and I just wanted to point that out because sometimes that's missed. We focus very much on the Middle East, but lest we forget that they come from all over the place, right? Syria, Colombia, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Iraq, and so to just be aware that they are a very diverse population. Also, we know that the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today is really this Syrian crisis, which when we look at the number, it exceeds, if we put all the other humanitarian crises together, such as the Haiti earthquake, the Hurricane Katrina, the tsunami, the combination of all of that does not equate to the number of people that have been displaced just for the Syrian conflict. So again, just emphasizing the extent of the problem. And also, lest we think that this is something that's passing, unfortunately, the global risks of highest concerns for the next not only 18 months, but for the next 10 years, has been projected that it will be migration and displacement because of climate change. So this issue is going to be staying with us for a long time. And so as we're thinking about our learning and our work at communities and neighborhoods, we should bear this in mind. I also wanted to point out that the top richest nations in the world have the lowest amount of acceptance of refugees. And as you can see in some of the numbers on the left-hand side, and the top 6 nations that are hosting the refugees and asylum seekers with the highest numbers are, for example, Jordan, Turkey, and others. So we're trying to, from this global, very brief global perspective, now zoom in into United States. And when we look at the United States, first of all, we do know that the numbers of acceptance of refugees is declining. And within the US, I just wanted to show here what are the top 10 US states that are resettling refugees in 2017. And as you can see, California is number 1, but we wanted to zoom in and bring it to Georgia. So Georgia accepted in 2017 1,872 refugees. So as we zoom in a little bit more now, we are going to now focus on a city called Clarkston. So Clarkston has many refugee settlement programs, saw that Clarkston is a good fit. 3,000 refugees settle in Georgia each year, specifically today, and majority of them have come through Clarkston. There are over 60 languages spoken in the city, with a population of 13,000, with more than 50% of them being either refugees or immigrants. 45% of residents in Clarkston are foreign-born. And so this city is referred to as the most diverse square mile in the United States. So we will now watch a very short video that gives us a picture of what Clarkston is all about.
The president's travel ban is having an impact.
It caps refugee admissions at 50,000.
This is a man who doesn't want Syrians to...
11 people were detained.
I will not roll the dice and take the risk on allowing a few refugees in.
We're the Ellis Island of the South, a place that is so diverse, has all these different religions, and yet is not having religious wars or ethnic strife.
I don't have to do big things to change humanity. It's all about small action.
Make America great again.
How you like my hat?
You look like Donald Trump.
So we are now in Clarkston, and we will share some insights from our work at the neighborhood level and also some of our experiences with the social action. And before we move into that, I also wanted to just share and remind us of some of the current discourse around the subject. The current discourse in the wider society is one of burden, that they are burden to communities. It's a deficit discourse, and it's a discourse that focuses on, even if they're talking about assistance, it's as if they are empty vessels in which we have to go and fill them in. And what we hope to portray after this is that we have to have a mind shift, and our work in the neighborhoods and our activities through the Institute process is really changing that. We look at them as gems, as gifts to every neighborhood and community, and how we are constantly being enriched by their presence and how we are learning from them. So we will now move this on to Soroosh, who's going to introduce himself, Lauretta, who's going to introduce herself. Sorry, you're not sitting in order. And she will share with us some of her activities at the neighborhood level.
Hello, Pa friends. My name is Lauretta George, and I've been living in Clarkston can you hear me, friends? Aloha, Pa. My name is Lauretta George, and I've been living in Clarkston for about 5 years, and am very involved in the Institute process, and have been very blessed with a wonderful community. Clarkston, well, to continue to explain, they decided to open their arms to the refugee population. And when the state of Georgia said we do not want any more refugees, the mayor of Clarkston wrote a letter to the president saying that Clarkston is still open for refugees. So it's but I really want to talk about working with the people in Clarkston. It's a blessing. Learning, this is about learning so much. Like as Baha'is, we're supposed to meditate, prayer, community, all these attributes that we are learning. These beloved people have many of these and are teaching me so many things. They lived in refugee camps, so a sense of community, of course. They have that great sense of community, walking into each other's homes. So in service to each other, when we mention service, that the Ruhi Institute is about service to each other, of course. Service is very important. So learning these elements from the friends in Clarkston has been a great privilege. And walking in, if people who have gone through experiences such as they've experienced, there's a lot of material things are taken care of by many committees, and those things are taken care of, housing and but if you went through something like this and thinking of like Abdu Baha, how like a friendship. And really, what does it mean to be a true friend and really listen and learn from each other and being within the community? And we're always looking for that perfect thing to like, magic pill or whatever to, the entry by troops. Like, what is that magic dust? And really, it takes effort, commitment, and true friendship. And from the paragraph 4 in Rizvan 2010, I don't know if you have that slide. Okay, it's all right. In efforts to present the essentials of the faith plainly and unequivocally, the believers have benefited greatly from the illustrative example in Book 6 of the Ruhi Institute. And if we remember from Book 6, it was her friend. So these were intimate conversations she was having with her friend, not just I come to your door and I have my flip book and I'm going to read them to you. Whenever the logic underlying the presentation is appreciated, the urge to convert into formula overcome. It gives rise to conversation between two souls. And I love that image of a conversation between two souls. To me, that was very transforming to think about I'm not just like, hey, what's up? How are the games? Whatever. This is like between two souls. You really are actively concerned with what people have to give. Sorry. A conversation distinguished by depth of understanding achieved in the nature of the relationship established, to the extent that the conversation continues beyond the initial encounter, invaluable friendships are formed. A direct teaching effort of this kind can be a catalyst for an enduring process of spiritual transformation. Whether the first contact with such newly found friends elicits an invitation for them to enroll in the Baha'i community or to participate as one of its activities is not an overwhelming concern. More important is that every soul feel welcome to join the community in contributing to the betterment of society, commencing a path of service to humanity in which at the outset or further along formal enrollment can occur. Within this context, receptivity manifests itself in a willingness to participate in the process of community building set in motion by the core activities. And that was very key. I hear people, what's receptivity? What's receptivity? This is a receptive community. What does that mean? And here, our beloved House of Justice, it says a willingness to participate in the process of community building. So do you want to come to a devotional gathering? Would you like to, I don't know if we have some pictures of gardening, service projects with the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program. People care about their community. Youth care about the younger generations in their community, and they want to do something about it. So when you talk to them about praying together, studying together, and serving their community, they're very, their willingness to participate. So when we came to Clarkston, we realized this community was very receptive. And many, many youth came to devotional gatherings, joined junior youth. We had many junior youth groups. But I think really just that friendship, like, I don't know if there's pictures of going to, there's lots of international celebrations that each community and each culture have. And when you become friends with them, and they invite you, go to their celebrations. Be a part of, like, what would you do with a friend? Like, really think, what does friendship, if Abdu'l-Baha was our friend, what would he do? Would he come to visit us once a week, once a month? Or would he be there for us and listen to us and look and have a conversation between two souls? So really, when you're thinking about being a friend to somebody, like even when Abdu'l-Baha went and gave coins in New York City to it wasn't, many people help with, I'm helping you, kind of a, like, oh, you're, like, I don't know what like feeling sorry. I'm helping you because I feel sorry for you. And really, what I found in this community is I have learned so much from these beautiful souls. And inviting you into their home and making tea for you. I had a dear friend who every time I went out to go visiting in the community, she saw me coming into the apartment complex, she would make me come in, and it's cold, you need tea, you need good tea to keep you warm. She wouldn't let me go through the community if she saw me without having tea. And really connecting and meeting her grandmother and meeting her family. And that, I think, was a big learning also. Many youth came to the devotional gatherings, and then friends of friends. So we had a youth who came to my house for devotions, and next week he came with 9 friends, and next week he came with 12, and then there was 15. And they walked to my house. They would walk a mile or more to come to pray. And this is youth. And that really impressed me. Like, that was very learning for me, how they're willing to pray And then from those devotional gatherings afterwards, we would have lots of conversations, because they came from different backgrounds. And they would share how Christians would oppress the Buddhists, and the Buddhists would oppress the Christians, and how this religious conflict would happen within their community, even within their families, but how they felt by the devotions with the youth in my home, they felt comfortable to be able to share these thoughts and to be able to say their prayers and to share their prayers from Baha'u'llah. And really, I think that also the Word of God, that throughout the Institute process, we're memorizing words of Baha'u'llah. They're very powerful. And when the refugees come, many times you see in communities, like the Nepali stay with the Nepali, the Burmese stay with the Burmese, the Congolese, they kind of are in their different groups. But within the devotions and with the junior youth groups, they were very diverse. And even like a friend of mine went into a community and said, this community, the youth are actually playing together, the children. And I said, that's because there was a children's class there for many, many years. So the unifying power of the holy word of God, and watching two groups that actually there's like in conflict with each other in my home, and kind of studying separately, but the power of the holy word in music. They realized that this one young lady could play the guitar and they could sing. So they made a song that incorporated both of their languages and both of their styles of music. So it was through the power of the Holy Spirit, through the power of Baha'u'llah's words, that these youth who, and after coming to devotional gatherings and study groups, they said, oh, I have you in math class. Oh, I have you in science class. They knew each other, but they never communicated with each other. So connecting on a spiritual level helped them connect and support each other on many other levels. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. And from Insights from Learning, from Frontiers of Learning, a document from the International Teaching Center, it talks about the greater involvement in the life of society. And when you go into these communities and be involved in the community, so it's not an outsider, as the friends in advanced clusters interact more closely with families and form veritable friendships, they have found themselves drawn further and further into the life of society. Their efforts, which emerge naturally through conversations and common concerns, generally consist of two interconnected, mutually reinforcing areas of activity: participating in the prevalent discourse of society and social action. In both cases, the steps consist of simple, fairly informed acts. Some may eventually evolve into more complex, ongoing endeavors. So this, there's a picture, I'm not sure, up here of, the mayor organized a gardening day, so the junior youth came to that. They did work in the park. So the mayor has actually called me and asked me, he tells me, hey, we're doing this, can your youth come? Hey, we're doing this, can the youth come? Okay.
Thank you so much, Lauretta.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Soroosh Behshad, and I feel like the nerd amongst the cool kids up here. Clearly, they were probably looking for another Soroosh to be part of the panel, and they mixed up my email, but I'm happy to be here. And I just want to acknowledge my co-panelists for the work that they're doing, and it's a true honor for me to be here and actually, be able to collaborate with them. And I feel this in itself is a learning process for us of how to improve our services that we offer as a Baha'i community. So I am a member of the Atlanta Baha'i community. I'm a professor at Emory University, and I'm an ophthalmologist. And earlier in the conference on Thursday, we had a small session in which we talked about the refugee status, but also some of my experiences working mainly with setting up eye care for refugees. And you can see from the pictures here some of my life-changing experiences working with Syrian refugees living in camps in Jordan. And obviously, every time I return from these trips, I'm just filled with energy and excitement and really want to bring that back and make something sustainable in my community. And so my story and how it fits in here is, after one of my first trips, I had a patient who was a Syrian refugee and came into my private practice with insurance and had 3 people with him who were not family members. One was a translator, the other was a social worker, and the third was a volunteer from a organization that was assisting him from his town. And after leaving that situation, I just really saw how helpful this was because if I could have that with all my patients, where before they even leave, we know they're going to have a ride to their next visit. We know, who's going to pick up their medication, how it's going to get paid for, and all that. And so this really kind of got me interested of how this, why was this going on with this patient? And obviously getting more information and realizing he was coming from Clarkston, and being a new refugee, these were many of the services that the city was offering him. And so going to my next slide, I promise I'm going to connect this, but basically this is a picture of a Syrian refugee in a camp being examined by me, a refugee as well. And how this ties together is this boy has a chronic condition that seems to be pretty common among Syrians. And for me, this was a learning process in that, yes, he is in a difficult situation. He's lived through a war, lost family members, lives in a camp. But I'm able to offer him care for this condition to prevent any sort of complications that can develop. And how this connects with that patient that I was seeing in the US was that he had that same condition, except he was older, 29, 30. And unfortunately, he didn't have access to those kinds of services. And so now we are dealing with the complications and the surgeries that he basically requires, which we're preventing in this new generation of refugees. And so that going on, I lost touch with that patient here in the US, and he stopped coming to his visits, and I wondered what happened. And in that process, I realized that these refugees, when they come to the US, they get about 6 months of insurance and 6 months of services, and then they're expected to basically learn English and be able to get a job, and through that job, basically pay for insurance, which in his case was not the fact, and he actually did not have insurance, and his condition continued to get worse. And so that's actually how I got connected with the city of Clarkston, in terms of I reached out to the mayor, and he put me in touch with a group of physicians, dentists, and pharmacists who actually came together as through interfaith organizations and wanted to do something. And so they set up a primary care clinic in Clarkston in a building provided by the city. And mainly this is a safety net for those patients who don't have insurance but still need care. And so anybody who's an immigrant, a refugee, or could not be a refugee and doesn't have insurance gets free care here. And so basically approaching them and saying, can we bring ophthalmology, eye care to this clinic? I know that it's primary care, but they were super excited and basically helped set that up. And so basically early on Saturday mornings, we have dozens of immigrants and refugees who line up outside this red door. And when it swings open, they all rush into the busy waiting room, and many of them are balancing their little babies on their laps. And, and one of the exciting things that I look forward to when I go is part of the check-in process is we keep a log of where these patients are coming from. And so it's not really for record purposes, but it's more so that we have interpreters and we make sure we have the services that they need. And so, for example, from our clinic last week, we had patients from Ethiopia, Nepal, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, Niger, Kenya, Iraq, Burma, Syria, Tanzania, and Swaziland. And this is all in Clarkston, Georgia. So, as you can see here in some of these pictures in my next slide, this is basically the clinic. So on a normal Saturday clinic, in about 4 hours, we see somewhere between 40 to 70 patients. And one of the major important things for me was to have the students that I work with, the nursing students, the medical students, the residents, to be involved in this clinic. And so you can see there's a lot of young people in all these pictures, and they're all trainees. And so obviously this is all being done under my supervision, But I feel like this is a unique opportunity not only to provide care to the refugees, but for our trainees to have that unique experience and take ownership in the care of people, but then also have an opportunity to give back to the community. The other thing that is a big strength about this clinic is our volunteers themselves are refugees. And so, yes, this is helpful that we have interpreters for almost every language possible, but for them as well to be involved in their community to promote change. And one of the things walking away from this experience that has been the most impressive or shocking is how just the waiting room in this clinic can be an oasis for moral support for these patients. There are new refugees, old refugees, and they're just all kind of working to support each other, give each other advice, discussing hardships that they face on a day-to-day basis. And really this in itself, even though the clinic is providing care and the structure is there, but it serves as almost a support group for this segment of the population. And specifically, I can remember one instance where I came out, I had to grab something from the exam room, and there was a patient that was in tears and distraught, and everybody around her was trying to comfort her. And they were from different countries, and her issue was she didn't know how she was going to pay her rent because her services were cut. And the other refugees, not the organizations, were like, don't worry, you come and stay with us. We have a large house. We'll support you till you can find a place. So for me, walking away from that, yes, I'm providing eye care, but to see that is also going on in this situation is for me a very life-changing experience. And looking back at setting up this clinic, the most difficult thing was figuring out the day that we were going to do it on. It was not figuring out who was going to pay for it, who was going to donate the supplies, where we were going to get the support from. And so a lot of times we forget that we see a problem, we see the solution, and we put all these barriers to it happening. And so it's always important to kind of remember that we can always solve a lot of issues that are going on. And one of the greatest advancements in this clinic, I feel, is that we've been able to get funding and grants so that we're now able to provide glasses, not only the exams, but glasses free of charge for the refugees so that they're able to return to work and be a positive part of the community. We also, one of the other things is being a Baha'i is seeing the experiences here in the community is there's so many organizations that are working and providing services, but none are working together. So they all have the same goal, but one doesn't know the other exists. And so part of the eye clinic, we've become the leaders in setting up these health fairs, where all these organizations can come at one central place and tell the refugees and inform them of all the free services they have. And obviously we continue to expand our services and have free vision screenings. And so here, once again, you see our refugees are basically lining up, and we use a lot of the same techniques that we use internationally in the refugee camps. And so that's been a huge success. And so closing my part, a lot of times we feel that community service and social action has to be this sophisticated, complex thing that is happening on a regular basis, or needs to be something like a regular eye clinic. But really, even the informal, limited duration efforts made by one person or a small group of people can really affect the community. And as Baha'is, I think no matter what the scope or the scale of our activities in community service and social action, as long as we include the principles of the faith, it's always a positive result in the community. And my last thing here is just sharing this quote from Baha'u'llah, which is, "One righteous act is endowed with a potency that can so elevate the dust as to cause it to pass beyond the heaven of heavens. It can tear every bound asunder, and hath the power to restore the force that hath spent itself and vanished." One last plug is the documentary that we shared is going to be shortly in the next year will be available on Netflix. So please support it. It does include the clinic and the impact it's had on the community. The refugee that you actually saw with the Refugees Make America Great Again, he's actually a physician as well that does volunteer in the clinic. So with that, I would like to bring in Jasmine, who's going to tell us more about the Baha'i involvement in Clarkston and give us some more details on that.
Thank you, Soroosh.
Thank you so much. So my name is Jasmine Miller-Kleinhenz. I also live in Atlanta, but I live actually in a community called Stone Mountain, which is, I'm about a mile away from Clarkston. And so I was going to give you in the beginning, a little bit of the history of how we ended up in this this area, and then elaborate a little bit more on some of the gems that Lauretta alluded to in terms of what the refugee population, the Baha'is can be learning from the refugee population, what we should be learning from them, as opposed to seeing ourselves as someone providing services. So we've been working in this community, which actually the city of Clarkston doesn't encompass all of the refugees. There's actually some that fall outside of that city border. And we actually call this area Indian Creek because there's a street that runs through it called Indian Creek. And so we named it that. I don't know if anybody else calls it that, but the Baha'i sure do. And so actually we ended up in that neighborhood because we were trying to figure out what a neighborhood was at the time. And we were in apartment complexes throughout the city, and a counselor came and said, well, what is the reach of, in this case, the junior youth program in your most advanced neighborhood? And we said, well, there's probably 30 junior youth in this neighborhood. She's like, okay. And how many do you think you could work with? We said 22. She's like, okay, well, that's not really the foundation for the mass growth of the Baha'i faith or the junior spiritual empowerment program, so you probably need to redefine how you see a neighborhood. And so we started looking at areas with dense population, with a large number of youth, as an area that maybe we could work in because we could actually see large-scale growth. And so we saw this dark purple dot. If you've ever used the census map data, they have kind of these blocks, and you can figure out the tracks of population density. And we found this pocket, and actually there was a Baha'i who said, well, if you go there, there's children everywhere. You could start a children's class if you just, literally, you really can. You can walk out the door and they just come, hug you, kiss you, all these things, and it's wonderful. And so we said, yeah, well, that sounds like a good area to be. Let's go there. And we got there and we're like, oh, wait, everybody speaks different languages. Wait, where are you from? Oh, you're from all over. We had no idea what we were doing, and we didn't seek out the refugees. We stumbled upon them, and I'm really happy that we did. And so a lot of what we've learned has to do with that we went in there not having certain expectations from them, as a lot of organizations that work with them do. This is a picture a few years ago, the first night of the Summer of Service, where these are primarily youth from that neighborhood. I'm sure you can tell that they're from all over. They seem very happy to start what ended up being, how many weeks was it? 10 weeks?
It was the entire summer.
It was the entire summer, from the night they ended school until the day they started school. They decided to dedicate their summer to serving and studying the Word of God. And so, as Shadi mentioned, the discourse around the refugee population tends to be one of deficit. They need services. They are so traumatized, and we just need to help them. And they're not gonna have Thanksgiving dinner. Let's make them a basket and bring them mashed potatoes and all these different things. Like, people have all these ideas about what the refugees need, who they are. And because we came in there not knowing anything, we didn't have any of these ideas. And actually, we were able to kind of then really reflect on the words from the House of Justice in terms of how we would try to approach the neighborhood. And so this is just a part of the paragraph 17 from the December 29th message. It says, what is required from those involved, however, is long-term commitment and a yearning to become so familiar with the reality of a place that they integrate into local life, and eschewing any trace of prejudice or paternalism, form those bonds of true friendship that befit companions on a spiritual journey. And so that's how we tried to approach our work in the neighborhood, not ones of we are the saviors, that we have anything to offer them. And so because of that, we were able to see that we need to learn from them. As Lauretta mentioned, they have the strongest devotional character that I've seen, in terms of, you would go around talking to people and you would go and there's 40 flip-flops in front of a door, and that's because 40 people are inside already praying before you get there. And so talking about prayer is not something foreign. It's accepted, it's loved, it's said, oh, come right in, let's say a prayer together. And that's so refreshing. But it's not, I'm sure you've all been in spaces where when we say prayers, you know, it's almost like a function of, okay, we have to say prayers now, we'll start our meeting, we get up, you know, we do these things, and it's not, that sense of devotion is sometimes not so strong, but they really are, it's not just a function, they're praying because that's an integral part of their lives. Another thing is a sense of community and family that they have. In some areas, maybe you go and you say, oh, we're community building. Wouldn't you, you know, love to build community and learn about your neighbors and all these things? Well, you know, that conversation does not make sense there because they already have a very strong sense of community. And we were talking earlier, and it's like almost like there's an open door policy in that community. You knock on a door, they say, come in. You're like, but do you want to know who I am? Not really. Come in. And I know they don't want to know who you are, but like, you'll be like, but you don't know me at all. I'm a stranger. And I don't know if you're like, whatever, come in, have some tea. And even though a lot of times we do not speak the same language at all, but that love is the language in which we speak. And it's very clear that they truly love us, like as they are meeting us. And they're not like, what service are you here to offer necessarily? They truly want to be our friend. Another thing is a willingness to sacrifice is something that has been instilled in them through circumstances, but also probably through culture. And it's something that we also need to learn from. As mentioned, you know, the first 6 months they're provided with services and insurance and housing, but then they have to get jobs. And in a lot of cases, the jobs that they are directed towards are jobs that are very demanding. A lot of them work at a chicken factory that's not close. It's about maybe like an hour or so away.
2 hours usually.
2 hours. They have to get a ride out there. Oh, I only have 30 seconds. Anyway, so to make a long story short, really, they will spend from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. working very hard. And when we say, do you have time? Would you like to study the Word of God and to work shoulder to shoulder to build community? They say, well, yes. Come at 12 p.m. I'll take a nap, and then I'll wake up, and we'll study together. And a lot of times, myself included, I think about all the things I have to do in a day, and sometimes I'm tired, I don't want to do anything. And they actually are doing very difficult things. And they still make the time to integrate into, not assimilate, but integrate into the community building process, offer their gems, and really push us forward. So I'm sorry I took more than 30 seconds. But so I did want to mention that even though we've been doing this, there's so much more that we still have to learn. At one time we had hundreds of youth involved and their families and all these things, and then there came a point where we hadn't learned about how to work with the community, that they were at the vanguard, which it mentions in the 25th paragraph of the December 29th message. And so some of these questions that we're learning, which you can read yourself in the January 5th message from the House of Justice in 2015, are ways in which we are really trying to make sure that we are not the ones at the forefront, that they are at the forefront, that we are working shoulder to shoulder with them and not them behind us or any of these things. But, thank you.
Thank you so much. So friends, first of all, let me thank each one of our panelists for their beautiful contribution to this important discourse. And what I wanted to leave us with is just a quick summary of some of the points that they shared, some of the learning that we have really accumulated in working with this population, and our hope that each one of you will increase this learning and share it with others. So some of the things that were mentioned is, for example, the institute process caused unity for different refugee groups. Because whereas those populations just seem to just be with each other, through the participation to the institute process, they created unity within the groups. They have a thirst for spirituality and belonging to a community that they bring with them. And the more we have the chance to really associate with them, we can learn from their sense of spirituality. They have a natural way of giving back to the community. And I know myself from my work in my neighborhood that many of these populations, they spend their food stamps, for example, in buying gifts for their hosts. And their degree of hospitality and love is really exemplary, and it's something that we can learn from. Also, they can bring the community together through the service project. They have a natural tendency to serve others, and we can learn from that as well. And the last thing that I wanted to say is that their sense of devotion to their family is also exemplary and something that we can learn from. And I hope that as we engage more and more in the communities and we really accompany them so that they can become really the people who are at the forefront of this learning, each one of us will have many, many more examples to share in the next time we are together. So we leave you now with this quotation from the Shoghi Effendi that really tells us how we have to view our work. He says, "Ours rather the duty, however confused the scene, however dismal the present outlook, however circumscribed the resources we dispose of, to labor serenely, confidently, and unremittingly, to lend our share of assistance in whichever way circumstances may enable us, to the operation of the forces which, as marshaled and directed by Baha'u'llah, are leading humanity out of the valley of misery and shame to the loftiest summits of power and glory." Thank you, friends.